Let's begin with any questions about the practice meditation, anything we've done so far today. Any just very practical questions? Everything clear? Everything confused? Everybody gets it? Just nod your heads if you do. Okay, so somebody who needs feedback, Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So this is a new year, as we all know, and on the 1st of January, our community celebrated our beginning new ceremony. It was also online. It was very well attended. And then Betsy did a online workshop yesterday on, and Bill? Bill, oh, there you are. And Bill did an online meditation workshop yesterday on vows, commitment, intentions, I call the technology of change. And vow, commitments, intentions, aspirations are key. Step one, we have to know the direction we're going. Thinking to build on that, this morning, and also because I'm sort of investigating these early suttas of the Buddha, I wanted to share one that I thought was really on target to help us. Anybody who's watched their mind may have noticed that our minds are fundamentally one of the most incredibly unstable entities, right? It is constantly changing. Have you noticed that? Thoughts, feelings, perceptions, memories, it's an endless unfolding, right? And it has its own energy, right? It has its just own endless continuation. I mean, we can just sit there in mindful awareness and it will just keep producing thoughts, stories, memories, right? It's got its own energy. You don't have to do anything. The problem with that, if one wants to change, is how do I break into that karmic historical flow of my own mind and its stories and its energies and its issues and its, right? How do I break into that with something that is fundamentally unstable? So how many people here have set really meaningful intentions in their life? And how many have found that it just works out perfectly? Right? I mean, just, set the intention, attend Betsy's workshop, everything's perfect, right? It's not the case, is it? Yeah, something else is needed to break the patterning of our minds and to create new patterns. And the technology of that is really what a lot of Buddhist practice, meditation, mindfulness, and other things are about. So anyhow, this was interesting. So this is a little sutta, which I think can be helpful to us, for those of us who want to change. So the suttas are again, taken from real-life Buddha when he lived in India after his great enlightenment around 35. He taught for another 45 years. He taught until he was 80. Every day interacting with his monastic community, with lay people of all types. So there's a voluminous literature called sutras of the Buddha's interactions, which were all memorized by his monastic disciples and eventually written down. They were passed on orally for several sessions. So this is called the Meghiya, and forgive me for those who, Pali is not a spoken language, so I'm safe, but they probably know how to pronounce Meghiya Sutta. And anything that says Sutta, Sutra, is purported to be true, actual words of the Buddha. So it begins. At one time, Buddha was staying near Kalika on the Kalika mountain. At that time, the Venerable Meghiya, and he was the Buddha's attendant. Many of you are used to Ananda, his first cousin, being his attendant, but Ananda wasn't the attendant for the first 15, 20 years. He had different attendants. So Meghiya at that time was his attendant, and he went up to the Buddha, bowed, stood to one side, and said to him, "Sir, I'd like to enter Jantu village to go for alms." So this was the life, they had no food, they had no kitchen, they totally, these are the Buddha and his followers, every day would go into wherever village they were, basically begging for their food. They would hold their bowls up and whatever was given them. So there was a very close relationship between the monastic community and the lay community. I mean, they could not live without each. I mean, the monastic community depended on the lay community to feed and support them, and the lay community depended on the monastic community to be lights of wisdom and intelligence for them. And the Buddha said, "Go," okay? And so Meghiya robed up, took his bowl, entered the village for alms, and after he had collected his alms round, he went to the shore of the river, and as he was walking along the shore of the river, he saw a lovely and delightful mango grove. And a thought occurred to him, this is lovely and delightful, right? What a place to meditate, right? So peaceful here, so beautiful. I'm going to go back and ask the Buddha, who was the head of the community, if I can come back here to meditate. So he went back and he told the Buddha what had happened and said, I would love to go back to that mango grove to practice. And the Buddha says, we're alone. Wait until another one of our monastic community arrives. Now, why he said this, we don't know. One could be, he's his attendant, and there was no one else here. You're supposed to stay here until somebody else arrives. It could be maybe that he wanted somebody to go with him, because traditionally monastics do not often go by themselves, or maybe he knew something. So, Meghiya, being young and persistent, and really having a thought in his mind, I really found the perfect place to meditate. My meditation will be great, right? A second time asked him, sir, can I please go to the grove and meditate? The Buddha says the same thing. Why don't you wait? Why don't you wait? A lot of people don't like to be told to wait. And then, a third time. And finally, he asks him. And Buddha says, anyhow. So finally he says, I think he wore him down. He said, since you're going to meditate, what can I say? If you want to go, go. So Meghiya got up from his seat, bowed to the Buddha, and he went to the mangrove grove, and he plunged right into it, sat at the foot of the root of the tree to begin his day's meditation. Maybe anybody has ever kind of sat down and really felt, I'm ready to meditate. All right, I can tell this can be a good one. Here's that. But while Meghiya was meditating in that mango grove, he was beset mostly by bad, unskillful thoughts, sensual thoughts, malicious thoughts, cruel thoughts, thoughts about, bad people and the bad people, what they do, or maybe, other people in the community kind of didn't like or thought they were bad or he was superior. Who knows what kind of thoughts he has, but they're all called unskillful thoughts. Thoughts, that one who is meditating like he was going to go meditate very purely, right, should not be having. Right? And he thought to himself, this is amazing. This is incredible. I left, the householder life, that's the life we lead, to become a monk. I renounced all that, right? And yet still, even though outwardly, right, I'm living one kind of life, still my mind is filled with unwholesome thoughts. I think this is very fascinating, because he thought what? He thought by making the external change, right, his mind would be purified. And then he had this dramatic moment of realizing, even though he was now a monastic, he had renounced the world, he had renounced all unwholesomeness, right? Had found the perfect place to meditate. What could be better, sitting by a river, under a mango tree? Maybe he liked mangoes and they just would fall down, you know. I don't know. And he realized, this is incredible. I've taken all these steps, I've totally changed my life, my lifestyle, right? And my mind is still beset by these same kind of delusive thoughts, right? Toxic thoughts, that I had, before I, became a monastic. Okay? I think this is very meaningful for us, right? And I think especially, with, just at this new year, many of us have made changes in our life, right? We want to change, we want to transform. Many of us outwardly have maybe given up bad habits, other kinds of things, right? We've gone, beginning anew, we attended Betsy's workshop, right? And yet we sit down to meditate and we might find what? Just like Meghiya, we may find, but my mind hasn't changed. Anybody ever have that experience? Anybody ever had that disappointment? Anybody ever have that frustration? Anybody ever get discouraged? Okay. So this is 2,600 years ago, right? And he was living with the Buddha. Right? Right? I mean, So this is very powerful. So it's interesting to see what the Buddha says. So he goes, incredible. It's incredible, he says. Amazing that I've left lay life, householder life, homelessness with this faith that somehow I'll now be a transformed being, and still these kinds of unskillful, unwholesome thoughts beset my mind. So he went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat down, and told him what had happened. So it's interesting. The Buddha says, Meghiya, when the heart's release is not ripe. Now, heart's release, what's a way that we could say it? When we don't have spiritual maturity, when we don't have emotional maturity, when we really haven't tasted the freedom yet, right? Anybody can relate to that? Yeah, so when we haven't, so he's saying, when the mind is not yet ripe, right? Still unripened. 5 things help it ripen. So please interest what the Buddha is saying. Okay? Now, many people would think he would now give him what? Yeah, well, 5 things, but we would think he'd give him meditation instruction, okay? Let me give you some very clear instruction about how to handle unwholesome, unskillful thoughts. Right? That would be very helpful, wouldn't it? Yeah, let me go right for the issue. Interesting what the Buddha does. Now, obviously, the Buddha's a great meditator. He could do that, but he's teaching something else, which I think for all of us is very interesting, because I think these days mindfulness meditation, while it's important, is overemphasized, and people don't realize if they want to transform and really change, other ingredients are needed. It's not just mindfulness and meditation, it's just part of the recipe. So, when the heart mind is not ripe, 5 things help it ripen. I think ripe ripen is a good metaphor, right? Anybody ever go to the store and they buy an unripe banana, an unripe pear, an unripe tomato? What are the kind of things that we get that aren't ripe? Peaches, strawberries, what? Avocados, mangoes, good. So what do we have to do? Patience, we have to put it, and you can do things, right? You can put them in a bag, you can put them in a warm environment, you can do things to help them ripen. But they have to ripen. If they don't ripen, how do they taste? Well, they don't taste, they're not nutritious, they don't taste good. Yeah. So our minds are that way. They have to ripen. And if we don't create the conditions to help them ripen, they won't ripen. Okay, so what are these 5? First, we need good friends, companions, and associates. I think that's fascinating. Right? That's where he begins. He begins with what? Community. But not just an ordinary community, not just an ordinary family, a good family, he says. Good friends, good companions, good associates. In the Buddhist tradition, that's called a kalyana mitra, a spiritual friend. So many of us have family members, we have good friends, they're friendly with us. We like them, they like us, right? You know what I'm saying? We like hanging out with them. True? But he's talking about a friend who nurtures you and supports you, who's a companion of yours, another way they say a comrade of yours, an associate of yours in your spiritual journey. This is essential, he's saying. He's saying this is the first criteria. It's interesting, it's the Buddha. Right? Why do we need spiritual friends? Why do we need associates to walk with us on this path? Well, one thing, they keep us motivated because we often lose motivation. So if you have a friend to motivate you, right? We have lots of friends, you call them up and you tell them about this, and you tell them, all your worldly issues and all that, and they can be good, friendly, and support, but they often do not have the ability to really help us change. They can be supportive and friendly, but their support basically is keeping us where we are. Right? We're here, and maybe they hold us up to stay here. But they don't help us transform. A spiritual path is about transformation. It's about a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. Right? It's about an unripe being becoming a ripe being. It's about an immature being becoming a mature being. It's about an ignoble being becoming a noble human being. So he says, this is the first thing that is needed. Right? To hold us, to support us, to nurture us in our transformation. Second is ethics, conduct. Seeing danger in the slightest fault. They keep the rules they've undertaken. So monastics have hundreds of rules. They have a very circumscribed life. Lay people, we have, in our tradition, we have 5 precepts, 5 mindfulness trainings. Other lay traditions have 10. But basically, the second thing is we have to stop creating unwholesome causes in our life through our own actions. I'm not ripe yet, I'm not emotionally mature, but I can stop doing things that are continually creating negativity within my own mind stream and in my relationships to others. So he says the second is, we in Buddhism we call it right action, skillful action. We can call it ethics. But there has to be some guideline. So we don't have to wait for transformation. Basically Buddhism, it's about doing no harm, doing the least harm. And in the positive thing, doing good. Right. So how do we do harm? We do harm with our what? With our body. One of the greatest harms that we can do is doing violence to another human being. Right. Hurting another human being. Taking the life of another human being. Life is sacred. Nobody wants to have their life taken. Nobody wants the life of their loved ones taken, harmed. So we have to stop doing violence, doing harm with our bodies. We do harm, there are precepts that we can do harm with our bodies by what we ingest, what we consume. A lot of people do harms to their bodies with drugs and alcohol, with all kinds of foods. Stop doing harm. Support what is nurturing and good in yourself, in your surroundings. So, having an ethical component, which is basically about changing the karma, the way we speak. One of our precepts is about speaking. Stop doing harm with our mouth. Right? Everybody know what harmful speech is? Yeah. Many of us have been on the recipients of that. When people say unkind, cruel, when people tear us down, when people, do all those kinds of things, it's harmful. On the other hand, there's loving speech, there's constructive speech, there's supportive speech, which is helpful. Anyhow. So, and then there are things about, misuse of sexuality and other sorts of things. So, first thing, friends, spiritual friends, which means being very aware of those friends that are not supportive of our transformation or maybe taking us off in other directions. And maybe I should add at this stage, since many people these days have a very special friend that they really spend most of their time with. Anybody know who that special friend that you spend most of your time with every day? What? Yourself, but there's something else. What? Your cell phone, your computer, our best friend, who always does what we want, takes us wherever we want to go, never says no to us, right? What better friend than that? Always entertains us, right? Whatever we want, whatever we feel like. You want to listen to a kind of music? There it is. You want to watch a show? There it is, a movie. You want to be entertained with 5-second, 10-second little meaningless things all day? I'll give it to you, right? You want to check in and see what everybody else is up to? Right? So we should add that as one of our friends. Is that really a companion on the way? Okay, so the first thing is friends. Second is some sort of ethical code to our life, which again means I know the difference between a wholesome deed and an unwholesome deed. That to do harm doesn't. Now, the third actually is talking about speech. It talks in a way that is self-effacing, that opens the heart when they want, without any trouble or difficulty. Isn't that interesting? Talk that is self-effacing. Many people talk just to put themselves forward, right? Letting everybody know my opinions, my views, my ideas, what I've been doing, all the great things that I've been up to. So we use that to build up our sense of self, right? And many people in their speech, it's all about them, and they're usually not, often people, not very concerned about other people. What have you been doing? Tell me about what you know, or even interested in your views. Most of us were interested in telling people what our views are and getting them to sign up, right? Rather than, what are your views? How do you see the world? What is your life like? What's caused you to be the way you are? So, to talk in a way that's self-effacing and that talks in a way that opens our heart without trouble or difficulty. Talk that's not always talking about needs and wants, that has few wishes. He's saying talk that's nurturing of contentment. Talk that's about arousing energy and acting nobly and ethically and having wisdom and freedom and knowledge. And this is the third thing. So why don't we just stop for a moment and just ask ourselves, let's close our eyes. Because again, this whole drama unfolded because there was a young monk who thought he knew what was best for him, who thought he knew better than the Buddha, who kept saying, stay, don't go off, but he knew what was best for him. He went off alone. I can do this myself. And yet he went off alone and found out his mind was not what he wanted. So let's begin by asking ourselves, have I identified in my life that community, that circle of friends and companions that nurture my transformation? Just different than ordinary friends and family. They can be very supportive and kind. We're talking about a circle that nurtures our healing and transformation, that understands our journey, that's on the journey with me. Companions on the way. Do I have that in my life? And do I make use of it? I mean, Meghiya had it. He was living with the Buddha. And yet, we notice he does what he wants. He thinks he knows best. So ask yourself that. Next, ask yourself, is my ethical life clear? Am I clear in my mind what behaviors are unwholesome, that lead to suffering, that lead to conflict? Both for myself or in relation to others? Am I clear? It's very personal. Am I clear? Do I really observe my patterns of consumption, of my body, speech, with awareness and with criteria. And third, if I look at my speech, the way I speak with people, my interactions, what is it about? Is it really always in the support of wholesomeness? Is it always healthy, nurturing? There's a lot of my conversations telling people about me. Do I really see my speech as a tool for real connection with human beings? Letting them know I see them, I care about them. And do my subjects of conversation, are they, really ennobling to me? Ennobling to the person I'm with? Am I aware that my speech can be very helpful to them? And this is not, this is people we live with, family, friends, but this could be people we work with, people we interact with. What is the nature of my speech, my conversation? And also you could kind of turn this inward and say, the conversations I have with myself. How would I characterize them? Are they constructive, supportive? So now to the fourth. Furthermore, and here they translate the word mendicant, but for us it just means us, lives with energy roused up for giving up unskillful qualities and embracing skillful qualities. So this is really energy enthusiasm. They are strong, staunchly vigorous, not slacking off when it comes to developing skillful qualities. So again, this sort of ties in with aspirations, intentions, right? Commitments, vows. So once I really get, there are things that I do that are wholesome, that are nurturing, that I want to strengthen. There are things that I do, inwardly and outwardly, that are unwholesome, not conducive to the good, not conducive to my transformation, okay? So that's like insight. I get it. It's like I have criteria. I can see skillful from unskillful, wholesome from unwholesome, healthy from unhealthy, right? So what? So what if you don't do anything with it, right? It's like many people, they live their life saying, well, I know I should. I really shouldn't be eating this. I really should be eating like that. You know anybody like that? And yet what? Or, I know this is good for me. I know I should be doing. I meet people all the time. Oh, you teach meditation. Gee, I know meditation. That's been on my bucket list. It'd probably be good for me. But people stay like that for years. Right. So, and this is coming back to what we talked about with intentions and everything else. We can have great intentions, We can have great aspirations. Many of us do. But then, the energy, the strength, how committed am I to really work it? That's called practice. So again, this is obviously something very, so we can see with poor, Meghiya, he left his community, he thought he could do it all on his own, right? And he thought he didn't have to put any energy. Yeah, just go down to a beautiful place by a river, sit under a mango tree, The Buddha became enlightened under a banyan tree. I can become enlightened under a mango tree. And then he found out, no, it's not like that. There's got to be energy. There's got to be strength. Why? Because of the river of our karma. Right? When you sit down and meditate, you experience the river that's in your consciousness. Right? That's continually pushing us in a certain direction. And that direction is always based on history. It's not the direction that we want to go, it's the direction that historical causes, our conditioning, is just pushing us. And we don't have to do anything to get pushed along by our conditioning, our historical conditioning. It has a strong current, and it'll just keep pushing us in the direction. We'll continually say the way, we'll continually do the things we've always done, we'll continually talk the way we've always talked, and we'll continually think the way we think. And okay, that's a given. So once we begin to experience within ourselves some kind of awakening, some kind of sense of another possibility for us, another possibility for what it means to be a human being. And remember, the world is created by human beings. But first, we need to transform ourselves. Transformed human beings can create a transformed world. We can't skip over this one. So am I willing to put energy, enthusiasm, strength, consistency, practice into my desire to change? Well, let's just stop here. Okay, let's just close our eyes. So again, number one, am I clear within my mind that I'm really clear about the unskillful, unwholesome, unhealthy qualities of my body, speech, and mind that I really don't want to cultivate anymore? And am I equally or even more conscious of those qualities of body, speech, and mind, wholesome, healthy, noble, that I do want to cultivate, that I do want to manifest? Is that clear in my mind? So let's ask ourselves that. As I'm sure that Betsy told you yesterday, thinking about it once a day will probably not get us much where. Is it really uppermost in my mind? Like, what's on my to-do list today? Is the change and transformations and healings that I want for myself, is it on my to-do list today? Is it something I'm conscious of? So that's the first question to ask ourselves. And if it's not, then there's a reason why it doesn't happen. And then secondly, if it isn't my mind, is it energized? Is it energized? Do I put energy into it? Because if we don't put energy into it and it's just a wish, an aspiration, it will not happen. Why won't it happen? Because we've been working the other program so strongly for so many decades. That's where the energy is. So we want to make a shift. So am I energetic? Am I enthusiastic? Not slacking off when it comes to developing skillful qualities. This is very personal, isn't it? Outwardly, Meghiya looked good, didn't he? But this is inward. And finally, the Buddha says, a mendicant is wise. And what does they have? He said they have the wisdom of arising and passing away, which is impermanence. And this leads to the end of suffering. This leads to the realization of not self, which is the fifth in wisdom. They know that nothing is solid, nothing is stable, everything is changing, moment to moment, second to second. They know that. So in the face of all that, not only are they not afraid or confused, but they don't seek permanence and solidity in something that cannot give them that. In Buddhism, we call that wisdom. They're wise. So this is the fifth thing that is needed to support transformation. So now we're getting a little deeper into the teachings, deeper into meditation. Like we saw. We just watch our mind. You see, moment to moment, things are just arising and passing, rising and passing, rising and passing, rising and passing. All the dramas of your life, all the concerns in your life, all the difficulties of your life and the happinesses of your life, where are they all? Anybody know where they are? Anybody want to take a guess? Where are they all? What? Yeah, but where are they? Gone. Why are they gone? Because everything's impermanent, nothing's stable, nothing lasts. And yet what do? Ruminate. Same story over and over again. Hold on. Same story. Are we the same person we were 10 years ago? And yet we still have a story about me. And then I did this, and then I did that, and then I did that, and then I did that. As if we are the same person. We give ourselves a sense of meanness, of stability, of ego. We give ourselves an identity that we cling to. And yet, when you look deeply into your mind, you cannot find anything like that. It's very interesting. But that's wisdom. So I'd like to open this up in a moment to questions. So let us review, okay? Young monk, Buddha's attendant, gave up the householder life, shaved his head, took all his vows, part of a community, he's a Buddhist attendant, right? Passes a little mango grove by the river, thinks, I'm going to go meditate. Just like the Buddha, right? Goes and asks the Buddha, his elder, doesn't listen to him, goes off, does it, and experiences something that he didn't experience, right? I think that's called geographical change. Anybody know that? You know that it's called geographical change? Well, I'll just change my surroundings, then everything will be perfect. Right? Geographical cure. It didn't work, did it? Because he realized he took his same mind to the mango tree. All right, comes back, has this great insight. All his external changes has not changed his mind. Asked the Buddha for help. The Buddha does not give him meditation advice. Does not tell him how to handle errant thoughts. Buddha goes big picture. This is how we ripen. This is how we ripen beings. First, we give them a community of friends to support them. Can't do it alone. Thich Nhat Hanh, if there's one message he gave over and over again, especially in this age, so much stimulation, so much materialism, so much debased culture, can't do it alone. You need a community. What kind of community? A community that wants the same spiritual goals that you do and is willing to be there to support you and nourish you, guide you, hold you up when you fall down, you hold them up when they fall down, and you have fun together. Community. Second, you need ethical constraints on your behavior, because your behavior is always conditioned by the past. We'll continue to do it. And it's very simple. I mean, the thing about ethical constraints, especially of speech and body, is even though our mind can still be a mess, we can put constraints on our body. We can say no. The hand wants to reach, and we can say no, don't do it. That's simple. We can put constraints on our mouth. Don't say it. Keep your mouth shut. Listen. Don't interrupt. Ask about them. Don't always talk about yourself. Right? Oh. It's not that hard. But it begins the process of change. You want to create good karma. Okay? And then again, then we get into talk, kind, constructive. Talk about things that have some meanings, they're helpful. Especially don't talk about things that aren't supportive of people, of human beings. Gossiping, speaking ill of other people, talking about superficial things all the time. Yeah, you use this organ for good. Fourth was rouse up energy for transformation. Be on fire. You know, in our world we get on fire about lots of things, but then it changes. We get on fire to get this, or we get on fire about some issue, and we're on fire, and then that peters out, and we get on fire about something else, and we're energized. We're all over the place. Right? reacting. What if I just took some of that energy and consistently applied it to my own transformation, my own healing, freeing myself from anger and ill will and fear and anxiety and self-centeredness. You know what I'm saying? And it's all possible. It just takes what? Energy, focus. And finally, we have wisdom. We look at life, like some of the things I've shared with you already. Anybody can get that, right? Is everything changing all the time? I mean, you don't have to have a PhD in quantum physics to get that, do you? Everything's changing all the time. Nothing is stable. So why do we get so upset when things change? Why do we want certain things to stay the same? And it's like, I'm just going to suffer. So wisdom. These are the 5. Good way to go into the new year. Now we're all where we are. We're all where we're at. Okay? So don't use this as a tool to kind of frustrate you or say, oh, wow, I'm so far away, I'll never get it together. See, that's our distorted thinking. Even when a path is open to us, we often hear within ourselves, oh, I can't do that, or that's too much for me, or I'm too this, or I'm too that, or that's nonsense. That's just more of our thoughts. Where did we learn to think in that self-defeated way? Was anybody born with a self-defeating thought? I mean, can anybody kind of recall being 6 months old and having self-defeating thoughts? Right? I'll never get that pacifier into my mouth by myself. I just don't have the ability, you know what I mean? I'll never crawl. You look around at the 6 months old, you're 3 months old, you see him crawl and you go, I'll never crawl like that. Might as well not even try. Then you crawl, you see a 1-year-old walking, I'll never walk like that. Too hard. Standing upright and not falling, can't do that. See? If we thought like that, where would we be? We'd still be crawling around. But fortunately, we have this kind of innate capacity for courage to follow developmental steps until what happens? Until we develop this, or I shouldn't say develop it, we ill-develop it. And all of a sudden we have a mind that rather than supports us, sabotages us. None of us came into this world with that mind. If there's one thing you notice about little children is what? What? They're fearless. I mean, that's, as a parent or somebody takes care of little kids, that's the problem, right? They're fearless. Now, again, some kind of discernment is needed, but the opposite of fearless is not fearful. It's taking that fearlessness, but tempering it with some degree of intelligence, wisdom. So this is it's a very short sutra, Meghiya Sutta. 5 things the Buddha said to help his disciple. So questions online, just chat them in. Anybody in the hall, just raise your hands. And, anything not make sense, anything challenging, anything not understood. I thought this would be a good beginning for the new year. Everything's clear. No, yes, no questions? It went over here. And again, online, just chat them in.
In this recent intensive, we were offered a meditation, the field of care meditation.
Yeah.
And in one of the options in that meditation is to bring a benefactor to mind. It can be a person, a pet, whomever. And that seems to me like a particular kind of use of our past. You know? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So when I say the past doesn't exist, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist as memories. And that one cannot bring, of course, I mean, memory is a quality of our mind. The problem is we think our memories are real. No. It's a memory. It's like just a picture of something that doesn't exist anymore. Is that true?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So make sure we're all in the same psychological place. Right? Memories are just images, feeling tone about something that no longer exists. It's like a photograph that has some emotional color to it, perhaps. Or does anybody think their memories are real, like real things? This is very important. If you think your memories are real, I mean, when you look in a photographic book, you might have all kinds of pictures of all kinds of people. Is that the real person? Or is that you have a picture of being on vacation and are you still on vacation? Or are you just seeing just an image that brings up certain memories or feeling in the present moment? It's not real, is it? Anybody? This is like important.
It's not real in this moment, right? But perhaps at the time that it occurred, it was real. But
Well, of course it did.
it's no longer.
But you're right, in the present moment, it's no longer real. And that's what's important. Because we treat this stuff like it's real. And we ruminate on it, and we just repeat it, and we hold on to it, and we live as if it's still alive. But it's not still alive. But if we treat, especially if we treat negative stuff as if it's still alive, that will cause us what? What? Suffering. And I don't think any healthy person wants to suffer, do we? No, we want to be happy. We want to have a good feeling tone in our body and mind. So if bringing up a memory of a benefactor and somebody helped us, empowers us in the present moment, that's wonderful. That's a good use. Right? Right? I mean, if you look through your photo album, you see pictures of people, that loved you and you were happy, and that feels good. But it's just a photograph that's bringing something up. It's not real in any real sense. This is real. Like what's going in this moment, this is the only thing that's real for all of us. Everything else is just a fabrication of our mind. Is that true? That's a big one. Most people don't believe it. Most people think the things their mind are fabricating are real. Very dangerous. Why? Why is that a dangerous way to live?
Make decisions that way.
Well, you can make decisions that way, but this mind can fabricate anything, can it? It can make up any story it wants about anything. Well, that's the other thing is while we're busy fabricating all kinds of things about the past and the future and the present and people, we're missing what's happening right in front of our life, which is what the Day of Mindfulness is about. How do we learn to live life in the present? Because this is the only place that life is occurring. No matter what you think. And you can think anything. I mean, if anybody attends to the political, cultural situation of our time, what do we know? The mind is capable of believing anything. Is that true? Of course it is. very dangerous. So please, for all of us who want to live in some degree of sanity, of reality, we need to know what reality is and what's fabricated. Anyhow, yes, online.
Nikki says, I find speech very difficult to control when I'm with others. My mouth has a mind of its own. I know I want to listen more, but any advice on how to really apply that Dharma duct tape to my mouth?
Yes. Well, the first thing I would say to Nikki is, I would just ask yourself when you say things like, my mouth has a mind of its own. Is that true? Is there a separate mind that's connected directly to the mouth that's not connected to the ears or the eyes or the... And we would have to say, no, it's only mind, and it does express itself through the mouth, right? Words. And in Buddhism, this is a very important organ, because if you think about human relationships, primarily through speech, writing is another way of speaking. And I think many people have gotten bitten by, you can practice wrong speech or get into all kinds of things just by emails and writing things and texting, and right? So it's more than just words. Yeah. So first thing is to understand, right, that the organ of speech and words are very important and significant, and has a lot to do with how I enter the world, but has even more to do with how I nurture the people I'm with. To get that first. And then to know that I really, like we've talked earlier, I really have begun to try to understand the difference between wholesome speech and unwholesome speech, healthy speech and unhealthy speech, helpful speech and unhelpful speech, right? See, we're Americans. We just like to go right for it, right? But we miss the big picture. Again, do I really understand the nature of speech and the importance of it? Do I really have clear criteria for what is right speech, wrong speech, healthy, unhealthy, wholesome, unwholesome? Okay? Now, do I want to bring conscious awareness, mindfulness to this? Watch this. I just told my mouth, don't open. Now I'm going to tell it, I just told it to open. It was a little hard to demonstrate, right? Is that clear? The mouth does not have a mind of its own. The hand is, people talk about a lot of the things they do with all of a sudden I just found myself in front of the fridge, just pulling it, it's like, no, your body did not do that by itself. Your hand did not reach for that thing and put it, let's be honest here, right? There was a mind involved the whole way. The body and the mouth take its commands from the mind. This is basic Buddhism. Mind is the king. Mind is the queen. Mind is the chief. When we understand that, we understand if I want to change the actions of my body, if I want to change the actions of my speech, I have to be conscious. I have to be aware. I have to have criteria. And then, Nikki, we have to work it. Enthusiastically, energetically. Yeah. So when we're around people, we're very conscious of what we're saying and the effects of the words on people. And we're very conscious, what do I want to contribute here? If everybody is just gossiping and bad-mouthing and talking about other people, is that what I want to do? I don't know. I mean, if it is what you want to do, I guess you can just go ahead and do it. But when you go, I don't want to do that. It's like there's enough negativity in the world. There's enough people talking mean about other people or putting other people down or gossiping, right? I mean, is that really what I want to do? This is becoming conscious, you see. And nobody can make that change but you, each of us. We're all responsible for ourselves at the end. Responsible for the actions of our body, responsible for actions of our speech, and ultimately, for the way our mind is. I assure you, you can change anything you want about yourself. But you have to be willing to enter into the technology of change, the process that works. I mean, the Buddha's doing that a little here. It's funny, when I was a therapist for many years, so I earned my living, and when people would ask me, well, what do you do? I said, I help people change. I'm a change agent. I help people change. That's the way I define myself. I help people change. Other questions? Online? In the hall? Anything not clear? Anybody looking at their own life and not sure how to apply the Buddha's five things that are needed for ripening? To release the heart from its narrowness, to emotionally mature, spiritually ripen. Everybody get it? Yes, ma'am. Just wait.
You spoke about how we're not the same person that we were 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I have a question about the usefulness of a functional ego and not being attached to who we think we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so obviously, yes, from a functional point of view, what is your name?
Judy. I'm
Judy. So from a functional point of view, right, from an obvious point of view, Judy says, if I said, Judy, where were you 10 years ago? And Judy will say what? And she'll remember, and she'll go, 10 years ago I was blah, 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 blah. And do you remember what you were like back then? And Judy would go, well, I remember blah, 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 blah. Okay. Yeah, that's a functional. Those are just, yeah. But between that Judy of 10 years ago and the Judy who sits here now, she has a relationship. I mean, this gets deep. She has a relationship with that one. But it's more a relationship as being part of a process as opposed to being an entity. Because if you were a thing called Judy 10 years ago and you defined yourself like that, then you would have never changed, you see. But the reason, the reason the Judy who sits here right now is not the same as the Judy back there is because she was never a solid thing. So her thoughts, her feelings, her behaviors, her way she talks, that all can change.
Then how do we know who we really are?
Well, that is Buddhism 3.0. What's it? There's beginning level. There's middle. That's like what? Anybody academic 5? Is that a 5.0 class? What? Grad level. Okay. So yeah. So, but that's the ultimate question. Yeah. So a lot of it in the beginning is learning who we're not. So we stop identifying with all the things we're not, but ultimately we want to know who we are. Yeah, so that's the journey. But it's a process to get there. But I'll just give a hint. The Buddha says we're all Buddhists. That is our nature. We're all enlightened beings. That is our nature. We all have that potential. That's who we are. Now that's good to know. Feels good. Because we identify ourselves in such a narrow, constricted way, and we identify other human beings in such a narrow, constricted way. We forget, the potential of all beings. To be awake, to be free, to be happy, to have open hearts, all the good qualities. That's who we are. So, Happy New Year. I hope this wisdom from over 2,600 years ago that Buddha gave his young attendant Meghiya was helpful to all of us as we enter the new year. Thank you for coming today.